The sound of her own voice used to terrify her. That was the irony. Maya was a schoolteacher, yet every time she had to stand in front of adults, her palms sweated, her throat tightened, and her heart raced as if she were running from something invisible. On the outside, she looked composed, a woman in her late 20s, neatly dressed, polite, approachable. But inside? Inside, she was constantly at war with her doubts, her self-image, and the harsh whisper that repeated, "You're not good enough." The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Maya sat alone in her apartment, a stack of ungraded papers on the table, her phone buzzing with unread messages she had no energy to answer. She had been invited to speak at her best friend's engagement party, to give a short speech. A simple, 2-minute talk. But the idea of facing the crowd sent shivers down her spine. She stared at the mirror on her wall, tears swelling as she whispered, "Why can't I be confident like everyone else? Why am I always hiding?" That night, in her desperate search for help, she stumbled upon an audiobook titled, "Daily Tips to Improve Your Personality and Confidence." With nothing to lose, she pressed play. A calm, encouraging voice filled the room. The narrator's words weren't dramatic, they were simple, practical, but something about the sincerity pierced her defenses. Confidence, the voice said, is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite fear. And personality is not about being loud or popular, it's about being authentic, consistent, and kind. Those words clung to her like lifelines. The next morning, Maya made a promise to herself, one small step each day. She wrote it down in her journal, daily practice equals daily growth. The first tip from the audiobook was simple: smile genuinely when you greet people. It sounded trivial, almost childish, but Maya tried. At school, instead of nodding hurriedly at the janitor, she smiled warmly and said, "Good morning." His surprised grin was the first spark of connection she had felt in weeks. Something so small, yet it lifted her mood. The next day's tip: stand tall, even if you don't feel tall. She practiced walking down the hallway with her shoulders back, her head lifted. Students noticed. Colleagues noticed. And even though her heart still raced, she realized she didn't have to look afraid just because she felt afraid. Day by day, the audiobook became her invisible mentor. Each chapter seemed to understand her struggles, the awkward pauses, the shaky hands, the doubts about whether she was interesting enough for people to want to talk to. The advice was not magic, but it was consistent. Eye contact, deep breathing, listening more than speaking, setting small daily challenges. But change never comes without resistance. A week before her friend's engagement, Maya faced a major test. Her principal asked her to represent the school at a district event, to stand on stage and introduce the new student projects. It was exactly what she feared: a microphone, a stage, and dozens of eyes staring at her. Her first instinct was to decline, to make up an excuse about being busy. But then she remembered something the audiobook had said: every opportunity to speak, no matter how small, is practice for the future you're building. Say yes, even if your voice shakes. Maya said yes. That night she couldn't sleep. She practiced in front of her mirror, stumbling over words. At one point, she threw the paper aside in frustration. "I can't do this," she muttered. Then she remembered another line: confidence is not rehearsed perfection. Confidence is sincerity. She picked up the paper, breathed deeply, and decided she didn't need to sound like a flawless speaker. She just needed to sound like herself. The day of the event arrived. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the audience could hear it. She gripped the microphone, her hands trembling. For a second, her mind went blank. The silence stretched. She saw students in the front row waiting, her colleagues watching. And then she remembered the audiobook's very first tip: smile genuinely. She smiled. It wasn't forced. It was nervous, but it was real. The words slowly came. She stumbled once, laughed at herself, and continued. Something magical happened: the audience laughed with her, not at her. They leaned in. They connected. By the time she finished, her knees were still shaking, but the applause was real, warm, encouraging. Maya realized she hadn't been perfect, but she had been present. And that was enough. The true test, however, came at her friend's engagement party. The microphone was passed to her, and everyone turned their attention to the quiet teacher. Maya took a slow breath, remembering all the daily lessons: smile, stand tall, breathe deeply, speak sincerely. This time, her words flowed more easily. She didn't give a dramatic speech. She spoke from the heart, telling a short story about her friend, their laughter, their journey together. By the end, people clapped, some even teared up. Her best friend hugged her tightly, whispering, "You were amazing." Maya didn't feel like a transformed superstar. She still felt like herself, shy, imperfect, learning. But she also felt something she hadn't in years: proud. Weeks turned into months. The audiobook became her companion, her silent guide. She didn't just listen, she lived its principles. She started volunteering to lead small activities at school. She joined a local book club to push herself into conversations. Slowly, her circle of connections grew. People described her as approachable, warm, and confident, words she never thought would belong to her. But perhaps the most important transformation was internal. Maya no longer measured her worth by how flawless she sounded or how much attention she attracted. She understood now that personality wasn't about pretending to be someone else, it was about embracing